first video of my commentary on You Netflix series. I covered my impression with the series. I rave about how well the story is developed, and then I talk about why people might be vibing to the soundtrack of You and why they might be able to empathize with Joe. I then look at Joe Goldberg's psychology and life through the IFS lens to understand how his protective parts might have formed and how he ended up killing. In this episode, I'm going to do a very deep dive into the story and look at the dynamic between these parts, how hard they are at work to protect Joe and how difficult it becomes for Joe. I find it fascinating and I think you'll like it as well. As a child, Joe witnessed his mom, who was his source of love and security, being abused, used, and poorly treated by men. Whatever her struggle was, she's been in turn neglectful and abandoned him, or it seemed like the threat of abandonment was ever close, as she leaves him for hours in public places. And for a child, that is big. There is a scene where he looks in her eyes at some point and says, "You are my home." For whatever reasons, his father is not a source of security and love for him. He frequently takes his anger out on him and his mother. These kind of experiences lead to the formation of these called exiled parts, those that carry the hurt, the shame, the fear, those that feel abandoned, neglected, unseen, small, and powerless. At some point when Joe and Mom are hiding in the closet, scared, she gets out and tries to talk to the father, but things don't seem to go well. Joe, watching that from the closet, takes the gun his mom hid in there just in case, comes out and pulls the trigger. As a 9-year-old, his brain figured this would be the way to protect his mom, someone he loved, and perhaps put an end to all their trouble. This is such a tragic and unfortunate thing to happen to a child because of the imprint it leaves on their psyche. For this reason, guarding the safety of our children by shielding against images and inappropriate material they are exposed to is so crucial. There are lines that should never be crossed. If we were to look at less extreme examples, this is how as a child one develops a strategy to deal with an issue that poses a threat, in the absence of an adult who could offer comfort and protection. So they could resort to lying or retreating or keeping quiet, people pleasing in order to cope. And any adult would agree that this is not the best way, and understandably so, because children's brains are not fully developed, especially the prefrontal cortex involved in planning, abstract thinking, logic, and reasoning to understand the consequences fully. Yet as adults, our brains usually follow the same pattern of belief learned back in childhood. The parts that learn to protect us in that way continue to run our lives and work hard at it, as if that's the only way. One of the benefits of therapy is becoming aware of these patterns and updating them to the current reality. So one of little Joe's parts did the brave thing of standing up for his mom, and in this way protecting the powerless, scared part of him that felt the threat of losing her, his security and life source. Except as a result, his whole life and reality became unraveled. He ended up in an orphanage, farther separated from his mom, in a rough environment where he was bullied and mocked about his belief that his mom would ever come back to get him, without, again, anyone to protect him. What another part of him learned as a result of this experience is that essentially what he did caused him to lose whatever love he had. He completely lost his mom, never saw her again. Actually, there is a run into her by accident once. Joe is surprised and a bit excited. "Mom, Mom!" And then he sees her new toddler boy. "Who is this?" She's surprised as well. "What are you doing here? You shouldn't be here." This is when it seems to have dawned on him. He's been replaced. And it must be because he's bad, defective, and that's what you get. This is a very normal conclusion children arrive at in childhood. Again, children don't have the brain capacity and maturity to be able to conclude otherwise. They don't have that scope yet, nor the necessary reference points. In a way, their world revolves around them by no fault of their own. So his conclusions would be the conclusion every child draws when adverse circumstances deprive them of certain things, especially involving the love and care of their parents or caregivers. It's because of me. Further, when a protector is very extreme or that extreme, usually that is an indicator to how small and helpless the part they are protecting feels. By this law of inner physics, we can only guess the level of fear driving Joe, gleaned from the abusive adults and peers he's experienced throughout his life. In a way, his killer part could not afford a comeback. It had to be certain. As a protector, if we were to sit and have a dialogue with Joe's protective parts, we might find out they are protecting the same vulnerable part, just using different strategies. One is saying, I've got to keep this girl at all costs as an adult. Can't stand any indication that anyone might be in the way, nor that she might not love Joe. So this part will remove an adversary or a rival, and even the person he loves if she's threatening to abandon him or replace him or expose him. Other parts side up with this one to stalk, manipulate, coerce the target person into being with and only for Joe. Of course, when Joe is exposed and the person he loves finds out about his crimes and now she's under that threat, it becomes clear this is not love on his part, but rather an obsessive kind of possessing and controlling. So the second part comes up. An inner critic, of course she's not gonna want to be with you now. A killer, she'll leave you just like your mother. That must be really triggering for his feeling abandoned part underneath. And its fear is so strong that when it kicks in, the killer takes full control, fully blended. After the fact, when Joe realizes what he's done, the critic part comes up. Look what you've done. What kind of person does that? If anyone finds out, who will want to be with you ever? Even your own mother never came to see you. We realize then there is a third group of parts, some manager parts that took upon the role to control the killer part and help Joe get a clean start afresh. These are the parts also involved with planning a new beginning, moving to a new city, vowing to never fall into those patterns and stay away from it. As it often happens with burden protectors like the one we've encountered so far, unless you heal the hurt they are protecting, in this case, the terror of being rejected and abandoned, essentially not loved, with beliefs perhaps that I'm not lovable, I'm pathetic, worthless, powerless. These protective parts become default patterns of reaction to an activating event, leaving the person almost no choice. And often you're not even aware of it. He sees this woman and all the parts of him holding the longing to finally find love and belonging are awake with new hope. And this reality seems so close. When so much feels at stake for these parts, even the slightest threat to that possibility is going to awaken the protectors determined to not let anything get in the way, no matter the cost. And of course, once those get triggered into action, the whole cycle starts again. After the killer part has its say, the critic steps in. There you go, you've proven again you're not worthy of love. Almost immediately the controlling managers come up with a renewed vow, no, we will fix that, we can do it. It's interesting to observe in the second season that when he discovered his new love to have the same MO like his, murdering to remove anyone threatening the security of her newfound love, the parts of him that condemned that in him absolutely condemned that in her. Remember? He couldn't stand love anymore. That was the name of the girl. Something curious that happens in all of us. What we can't accept in others, often we can't accept in ourselves, first of all. However, pushing a part we don't like away will only make it stronger in its role. Moving towards it with openness and curiosity allows it to change. That would mean coming from the core self that is capable of that curiosity and openness. But the core self of Joe is obscured by his parts, and the control managers who run Joe's life no, it's very unlikely someone would be inclined to embrace this dark part of him anytime soon. Somehow it has to be bent for good. And that's what happens next. But this I will share with you in the next video, as well as about the last resort protector that comes in, and also whether there would be any hope for Joe in real life at all. Thanks for tuning in again. I hope you enjoy it. Please share, subscribe, and take care of yourself.